All right, we are moving on to intercepts from an equation. So just a reminder that an x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis, and it is also when y equals 0. And a y-intercept is when the graph crosses the y-axis or when x equals 0. Now, this is going to use our simple algebraic solving skills as well as our solving for one or two variable skills. So, let's move on. We have find the x and y intercepts of the equation negative 5x plus 4y is equal to 20. So we're going to solve for the x-intercept, and we know that the x-intercept is when y equals 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for y into the original equation. And we're going to write it. So we have negative 5x plus 4 times 0, because y is equal to 0, equals 20. So now we're just going to try to start solving this. We have 4 times 0 here, which is 0. So now we have 5x plus 0 is equal to 20. There's a plus in there. And by additive identity, we know that anything plus 0 is itself. So we could take that 0 away and we just get that 5x equals 20. Now this is the part where we need to solve for x, so we need to undo what has been done to the x. We have a 5 next to the x, which means that we are multiplying 5 times x. So to undo the multiplication, we have to do the opposite of that, which is division. So we're going to divide by 5 here, and what we do on one side, we have to do on the other side. So we're also going to divide by the negative 5 here. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1, and 1 times x by multiplicative identity is just going to be x. So that's why we get just x here. And then we have 20 divided by negative 5. I know that a positive divided by a negative is a negative, so I know my answer is going to be negative, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. So I'm going to get a negative 4. So when x is equal, we have the point negative 4, 0, because remember y is 0. So if we graph that, then we're going to go back 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up and down 0. So we get a point right there. Now we solved for the x-intercept, but now we need to solve for the y-intercept. And remember that the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we're going to do the same thing, plugging 0 in for x in the original equation. So we start with negative 5 times 0 plus 4y is equal to 20. And so now we're going to start with this multiplication here. We have negative 5 times 0, which is 0. So I have 0 plus 4y, which is equal to 20. We know by additive identity that anything plus 0 is itself. So 0 plus 4y is going to be 4y. So we just have 4y is equal to 20. And now we need to solve for the y. We see that there's a 4 next to the y, which means that 4 times y. And in order to undo that multiplication, we need to do the opposite of that, which is division. So we're going to divide by 4. And what we do on one side, we have to do on the other side. So we're also going to divide this side by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and we'd end up with 1y. By multiplicative identity, we know that anything times 1 is itself, so we get just y here. And on this side, we have 20 divided by 4. It's a positive divided by a positive, which is going to be a positive number, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. So we get that y is equal to 5. If we write this as a point, we have 0, because x is equal to 0. And when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 5. So we could go ahead and plot that point as well. We start at 0, we go side to side 0. Then we go up 5, and we have a point right there, which is our y-intercept. Now, in order to graph the line through here, we would use a ruler. We'd start at one point, and we'd connect it to this other point here, and you'll end up with a graph that's going to look something similar to that. And let's go ahead and do one more example. No, don't go away there. Right here. Okay, so now we have find the x and y intercepts of the equation 2y minus 2x is equal to 12 and graph the line through its intercepts. So first thing we want to do is we're going to solve for the x-intercept. Remember, the x-intercept is when y equals 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for y into the original equation. So we have 2 times 0 minus 2x is equal to 12. So we're going to start with the 2 times 0, which is 0. So now we have 0 minus 2x is equal to 12. We know by additive identity that anything plus 0 is itself. This is really plus a negative. So 0 goes away, but we keep that minus. So we have a negative 2x is equal to 12. So now we have a negative 2x next, or negative 2 next to the x, which means that we're doing negative 2 times x. We need to undo what has been done to that x. So in order to undo the multiplication, we need to do the opposite of that, which is division. So we're going to divide by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1, and we end up with 1x. Anything times 1 by multiplicative identity is itself, so we get just this x. And what we do on one side, we have to do on the other side, so we also have to divide this side of the equation by negative 2. It's a positive divided by a negative, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And I have 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So we get x is equal to negative 6. If we were to write this as a point, we would have x is negative 6 and y is 0. Because remember, we solved for when y equals 0. So let's go ahead and plot that point. So we go back 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up and down 0. So we have a point right there. So we solved for the x-intercept. We now need to solve for the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we're going to write the same equation, but just plug in 0 for x. So we're going to have 2y minus 2 times 0 is equal to 12. Doesn't look like an equals. There we go. So we're going to start with this 2 times 0, which gets us 0. So we have 2y minus 0 is equal to 12. Anything minus 0 is going to be itself as well. So we just have this 2y is equal to 12. So now we need to solve for this y. We see that we have a 2 next to the y, which means we're doing 2 times y, and we need to undo what has been done to that y. So since we multiplied a 2, we need to do the opposite of that, which is going to be divide by 2. And we have 2 divided by 2, which is 1. 1 times y by multiplicative identity. Anything times 1 is itself, so we get y just by itself. And what we did on this left side of the equation, we're also going to have to do on the right side of the equation. So we need to also divide this 12 by 2. They're both positive, so my answer is going to be positive. And I have 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So we get y equals 6. If we were to write this as a point, it would be x is 0. Because remember, we determined that x is going to be 0. And when x is 0, y is 6. So if we plot to that, then we have side to side 0. And we go up 6. And we have a point right there. Now, at this point, you would use a ruler. And if we were to use a ruler, then we would graph this through these 2 points here. And you would have a line that looks just like that.